When my mom died, I was devastated. I was trying my best to accept her death, but before I could fully grieve her passing, my dad married his mistress a month later. My parents' marriage was the definition of failure. It was painful to watch them fight and even more painful to see them still staying together for the sake of their only son. Mom found out about Dad's 3-year-long affair almost a year ago and had no choice but to accept it in the end. Her only other option was divorce, but she refused to leave him, and I still don't understand why she tortured herself like that by being with him even after knowing the truth. Dad was a bad husband and an unreliable dad. I was never close to him, and he never allowed me to be either. The mistress and her kids moved into our house immediately after the marriage. I was caught off guard by the idea of having a stepmom and step-siblings in my house. It was infuriating how Dad could brush off Mom's absence so easily, while I struggled every day to move on. I made up my mind to hate the mistress and her kids, but as fate would have it, I didn't have to force myself to do so. They were just horrible people. Except for the youngest son, the 2 other kids were annoying. The oldest ones were from her previous partner, and the youngest was from Dad's. With the sudden moving in, Dad asked me to move my things into the basement and sleep in the living room to accommodate everyone. When I made a fuss about it, he asked me to adjust to my new life. I was getting tired of him and his ordering around. I tried to rebel, but I was expected to suck up and make do with what I had. Being in the house made me suffocate more than I had imagined, so I purposely stayed out late after school and only got home when it was almost midnight. Dad warned me a dozen times before I was grounded. I wanted to shout at them, but he cursed at me. After they settled in, Dad and stepmom asked me to babysit their youngest son, who was 2 or 3 years old. I looked at them like they grew multiple heads. Apparently, they wanted to spend time together daily, and someone had to take care of their youngest. Seeing how I was home, they figured it was a good idea to appoint the role of babysitter to me. I was livid. I didn't have time to take care of a small child all the time. But before I could refuse, Dad strongly ordered me to obey him and threatened to kick me out of the house if I failed to listen to them. The situation felt so unfair, and I could do nothing about it. The helplessness made me want to cry my heart out, but I couldn't let them see my tears. So from the next day onwards, I had to take care of my stepbrother. The other 2, a boy and a girl, were much older than him and could take care of themselves, thankfully. It was frustrating, and the amount of time my dad and stepmom were home was getting lesser day by day, which meant that the babysitting job had to be full-time. It was exhausting, and it was affecting my studies too. Finally, I went up to my dad and stepmom and told them that I'd no longer act as the babysitter and that it was unfair. Stepmom shouted at me, saying I was ungrateful even after they let me stay there and that I should be taking responsibility by this age. Dad looked angry and told me that I was so stubborn like my mom and added that I was the reason why he hated her. That was my last straw. I couldn't beat him up. Instead, I threw several vases I could find across the hall, smashing them in the process. Stepmom was surprised, but Dad looked ready to murder me. I told him that I hated him for hurting my mom. Dad looked shocked at my outburst, and when he regained his composure, told me that I'd pay for what I did there. I left the house with a small bag of my necessary things. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, but it felt necessary. The only thing on my mind was to get somewhere safe, and my friend's house was the only option I could think of. I went there and explained the situation to my friend and his parents, who were more than ready to accommodate me for as long as I needed. Only after I settled in the guest room, I let out my emotions and cried like a baby. I missed my mom, and there was nothing I could do about it. When I calmed down, I thought about what I did and couldn't help but question whether my being aggressive was necessary. Am I the a-hole? A few days went by since I came to my friend's house. Dad tried contacting me every day, asking me to come back. It wasn't his concerned tone. Rather, he wanted someone to babysit again and do the chores there. Although I was forced to be the babysitter in that house, the only thing that kept me going in that house lately was my youngest stepbro. Dad didn't give up his efforts to get me to come back home. I never listened to him. When this continued for a while, Dad and stepmom came to my friend's house and made a scene in front of my friend and his family. They insulted me in front of all of them and tried to get me to go with them forcefully. Thankfully, my friend's parents intervened, asking them to let me stay with them for a while. He handled the situation pretty well compared to my dad, who was fuming there. Dad looked at me like I betrayed him and left with stepmom without another word. I was on the verge of tears, but my friend and his parents comforted me. Almost a week later, I had to get some important things from my house and decided to sneak in when dad and stepmom were out. But I realized my plan was flawed, as they were both inside the house when I went in. I looked like a deer caught in headlights, but I managed to keep calm and went to my room as if nothing was out of the ordinary. My friend and his dad were waiting outside, so I was confident nothing bad would happen. As soon as I went up, Dad followed me with a stern expression, and I simply told him that I was there to get some of my things and that I was leaving immediately. Before I could go ahead with packing, he stopped me and started shouting at me for purposely insulting him and his wife when they came to see me. I ignored him and was about to walk down the stairs when I saw my stepmom standing in front of me. Before I could make sense of what was happening, I slipped on one of the toys lying down and was already falling down the stairs. Hearing the commotion, my friend and his dad came rushing in and were startled to see me in pain. They immediately took me to the hospital, but not before my friend's dad gave my parents an earful. Even though it was an accident, my parents made no move to help me. As soon as the word about my being in the hospital reached my grandma, she rushed over to me. She was staying a good 4 hours away and was unaware of what was happening in my house. Grandma was crying when she saw me and apologized to Allah for leaving me alone in that house. Dad and stepmom never once visited me in the hospital, and it was the best for them considering my grandma was already making plans on getting back at them. Soon I got better, and my grandma wanted me to move to her house. Since school was over, I could look for colleges near grandma's house too, so I agreed and went to stay with her. As soon as I moved into my grandma's house, my dad called me again, asking me to return. This time, he even asked me to think of my youngest stepbro, as he missed me too much. I was totally confused. Some days ago, he refused to even come to see me in the hospital, and now he wanted me back home. Something was wrong, and I could feel it. Turns out, my grandma had threatened my dad before we came back, saying she'd cut him off from her will. She let him know that she knew how he and his wife were treating me and told him he'd pay for it. Grandma may appear sweet, but she can also be extremely scary if she wanted to be. Anyway, it wasn't like I would go back to him and everything would be back to normal. It was clear that he was putting up a show for Grandma to see. I joined a college nearby, and my grandma and I were happy together. It was almost a month later that I came to know about my stepmom's news, and I'd say Dad deserved it. Stepmom cheated on my dad with his friend and ran off with him. To make things even worse, she left the youngest son with him. The moment Grandma heard the news, she burst out laughing, saying he deserved it. The friend that she ran off with was known to be an abusive partner. I don't know what she was thinking. Another month went by without much contact from Dad. I heard from my friend back home that Dad was tired of balancing work and taking care of the kid. He looked ready to collapse. That weekend, Dad visited us and looked apologetic. Grandma was skeptical, but invited him in. He immediately turned to me and apologized for what I had to go through in that house. I didn't think he was capable of even admitting his mistakes. Dad told me that he was unfair to me and wanted to make things right and begged me to give him another chance. I told him honestly that I wasn't sure I'd be able to. He looked defeated, but asked me to visit him and the kids sometimes, to which I agreed. I went to my dad's house a few times after that. I never paid him much attention and was only there to spend time with my stepbro. He seemed fine with that, but somehow, Dad's behavior towards me changed a lot, and I was thankful for it. It didn't mean I forgave him for everything. Not the a-hole. You adjusted for a while before blowing up. They were supposed to take your feelings into account before imposing something like that on you. Your dad's a jerk for making you feel unworthy. I just love your grandma, and it's amazing how your friend and his parents came to your rescue whenever your dad and stepmom messed up. Your dad needed a reality check, and the Mistress leaving him was the best one. Am I the a-hole for taking my $300 espresso machine away from my college roommate? Context. At the start of the semester, I, female 19, told my college roommate, female 18, that I would be bringing my espresso machine to college with me in place of a coffee maker. and since she's also a barista for a large corp company, that she would be welcome to use it. The issue, my only condition about her using the machine, is the fact that I would like to teach her how to use it first. I used it sparingly because espresso pots are expensive and I'm barely in the dorm. After about a month and a half, my side of the room started to smell rotten. I spent the day cleaning my side of the room, trying to find the source of the odor. The machine was positioned in the window right next to the head of my bed. Then I looked at the catch bin of the espresso machine. The entire thing was covered in a slimy mold and overflowing with empty espresso pots. I asked my roommate if she had been using the machine, even though I never taught her to use it. She said yes, and that she wasn't stupid and knew how to use it. When I opened the pot holder, the entire machine was covered in mold and slimy water. It took 2 hours to clean and get it working again. At that point, she had gone behind my back on several things and nearly broke my espresso machine. So packed it all up in a crate and put it under my bed, saying that it no longer works because she let it grow mold on the sensors. To clarify, the machine works fine, but there was mold on the sensors that could have broken. Then, I took a bus home a few weeks later and took the machine with me. Some people are calling me selfish and rude for taking a resource that I promised her, but I felt that this was the last straw for me as her roommate. So, am I the a-hole? To give context to the last straw part, my roommate and I have had several conflicts. She's opened several items of mine. For example, care package items, eaten my food, broken my stuff, and has had illegal substances within the dorm despite my stated discomfort. I made my stance on substances in our room clear due to addiction in my family. It was on my housing profile when we first met online. She constantly pushes me to just try whatever she's having, despite my several explanations. So, when the machine conflict arose, I took it before it could be truly broken like my other belongings. Not the a-hole. It is not a resource. It is your possession. I really wonder why you own a $300 machine that you don't use, but it's up to you. If your roommate wants to open a discussion about getting an affordable machine together as long as it is kept clean, then you can consider that. God, not the a-hole. The people saying you're rude are a-holes who definitely would have also cultivated mold in your espresso machine. She allowed mold to grow in something that you owned and she didn't pay a cent for it. And yes, she is an idiot, because if you notice the rotten smell, then she would have too. Especially seeing that she was the only one using the machine regularly. Another insane part of this is that she was regularly drinking coffee that came out of a mold cover machine. This alone should make you never share any food-related items with her ever again. And since she's whining about the espresso machine that she ruined, she can go pay for one if she wants one so much. My kid is in 3rd grade. I drop her off every morning, and at her request, I hang out outside the gated area until her teacher comes and they walk into class. We usually arrive very close to when the bell rings. Today, as most mornings, my kid went to the cafeteria when she got to school and grabbed some food. She walked over to her line with her food and was in line eating when her teacher arrived and told her to put it away. I saw a brief exchange. Then I saw the teacher's hand reaching for my kid's yogurt, which she then snatched out of my kid's hands and told her she could have it back at snack time. I was a bit taken aback by this, but still in observation mode. When my kid dropped her head and started sobbing, she turned to see if I was still there. I was. I knew what kind of morning she had, and I felt bad, so I waved her over to come to the fence and talk to me about it. I'm outside of the gate surrounded by parents. My kid is sobbing because her yogurt just got snatched out of her hands. I had hardly gotten a word in when the teacher, who must bolt all the way across the backtop, shows up, ignores my presence, and tries coaxing my kid into class while my kid is ignoring her and trying to tell me what happened. I looked at the teacher and said, "Can I just talk to her for a minute where I'm not surrounded by parents?" She came at me with the rudest tone and said, she has to go to class, and she's holding the yogurt as far away from my kid and myself as she can. And I'm like, no, I want to talk to her. And she snaps, she's going to have to come in through the office, and then storms off. What the hell? The facts. Number 1, I don't agree with the teacher taking the yogurt, but I had no intention of challenging her on it. 2, Mornings are rough in our house. My kid is not a morning person. She had just turned her morning around only to have it flipped back over. 3. I waved my kid over because she was really upset, and I wanted to make sure she was okay and reinforce that she was going to get her yogurt back at snack and then send her on her way. 4. This is the everyday routine. Get to school, go to the cafeteria, and get in line for food. I've seen the teacher ask her to put it away before, and she complies. The gray areas. The teacher said that she couldn't eat in class, and that is why she took it, but they weren't in class yet, so I didn't understand why she couldn't eat it on the way to class. What are the rules about eating at school? I was so offended that I got snapped at that I almost took my kid home for the day and went screw this. But my kid and I talked. Her aide came out and we had a brief chat and I got her into school. But I'm still here like, what the hell? Am I the a-hole for checking on my kid for ISTA for snatching my kid's food and starting all this drama to begin with? I was okay with the parent until she said the child should be allowed to eat in the halls. This has never been allowed in any elementary that I have ever heard of. Of course, cleanliness is what I was thinking. Janitors have more to do than just clean up after kids. That's a needed courtesy to not treat them like servants. If OP wants the child to eat at school, get them there sooner. Your other points are very fair and valid. I just never actually thought about those things before. But I am very into giving children explanations. I will be keeping those points in mind as I am raising my granddaughter. There's usually more than one reason for rules, and you obviously work in a school, so that's very helpful for the rest of us to know and understand as well. This has nothing to do with allergies. This has to do with the parent arriving right as they're supposed to be going to class. So all food and trash are supposed to be cleaned up before lining up and going to class. I've worked in a school. You don't want children leaving trash and food all over that need to be cleaned by custodial. OP, you're the a-hole because for some reason you haven't been able to set a calm and orderly morning schedule that would allow your child to either eat breakfast at home or arrive in time for the breakfast period. You're the parent. You're the adult. You set the tone for the morning. Get it together. I've been a teacher for 15 years. It's the hardest damn job in the world without parents making it even hard for us. 100% you're the a-hole. Just let the poor teacher attempt to do their damn job and ask if there is any way you can help out from home. You know, maybe feed your kid before sending them to school and making the school do that too.